Well, thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and I'd like to rise to concur with the remarks that have been made. I remember few things from when I was 8, but I certainly remember where I was on the 11th of November 1975, as I suppose many people in this room do. And I must admit that the discussion that happened under the banana palm at 10 Henderson Street, Val Beach, between ourselves and our neighbours showed two distinct sides of a political fence. But why was it that one person could have such an emblematic effect on the Australian people? Why was it that one person had the capacity to draw people out? Why was it that one person had so much presence? At 6 foot 4 inches tall, Margaret said that he was the most delicious thing she had ever seen. And it's with great loyalty that their relationship, their marriage, lasted for so long and was so self-fulfilling for both of them. But I think to remember Whitlam, we have to look at the colour of the person, the wit of the person. And I think the retort from Charlie Jones is one of the classics that remain, where Whitlam, in describing himself, said, "I travel economy and I am a great man. I could travel economy for the rest of my life and I would still be a great man. But most of the people around this table," and that was the cabinet, "are piss ants, and they could travel first class for the rest of their life and they would still be piss ants." Now, this bravado and colour gave Whitlam presence. This bravado and colour was emblematic of courage, and courage and presence gave nurture to vision. Courage, presence, vision and wit. Whitlam was a breath of fresh air. He stepped away from the former doctrinaire process of politics. He was a staple that heralded a new political age. He was the new Labor leader. He was the Labor leader from a new form of schooling. He was seen, in many instances, as liberal in his views. My parents, when they had a choice between McMahon or Whitlam, voted for Whitlam. They didn't the second time. But this was what he was seen. He was seen as visionary. His courage was evident when, at the outbreak of World War II, he joined the Sydney University Regiment in 1939. He didn't need to be called, he joined. His courage was seen when he had advanced to the rank of Flight Lieutenant and was in the 13th Squadron, flying a Lockheed Ventura bomber, I believe. His courage was present when he stood up for Catholic schools in funding. And I'd like to quote something from the 10th of August 1969 at the Sydney Town Hall, when there was a rally and those who stood up against Catholic school funding were heckling him from the audience. And he looked at them and said, to one lady in particular, and said, "Go back to Belfast." Now, from a person who had been schooled at Knox Grammar, who had grown up on the Protestant side of the fence, it was yet another statement of a person who had real courage and commitment, who would stand against the crowd. His courage was there when he was threatened with disendorsement by the Labor Party. His courage was there when he resigned on behalf of Brian Harradine, because Brian Harradine was not going to be given a position on the executive, and stood to the challenge of a vote and won the vote. This is the reason a person is a giant. This is the reason the person is emblematic. This is the reason the person has character, and this is the reason this person is so well remembered. Whitlam had also a vision of decentralisation. Gough Whitlam showed this vision in pushing the Labor Party to adopt policies that pushed their focus past the outer suburbs of major cities and into regional towns and growth centres of inland Australia. Gough once said in the Parliament that, and I quote, "One of the saddest things in Australia is that whatever one goes to the country, one finds a local newspaper in a report of farewell for some teenager or man or woman in his or her early 20s who is leaving for the city, by which is meant the state capital." It is something that still happens too often today, and the results of Whitlam's government's regional initiatives, as with subsequent governments, have been mixed. Still, Whitlam introduced changes to regional development policy that persist today. He substantially extended the use of Section 96 to provide direct Commonwealth payment to local governments, including introducing a Commonwealth Grants Commission process to make payments to local governments based on need. Under special legislation introduced by the Whitlam government, Australia was carved into 76 regions with different types of regional organisations established in them. One of those was the Western Sydney Regional Organisation of Councils. ROCs still exist today, and most local governments being members of regional cooperative society and surrounding administrations. He established the Albury-Wodonga Development Corporation, and the results of which are seen in a population of excess of 100,000 people today. Whitlam also was a person who saw his future and the future of the nation in education. In his engagement with China, with Zhao Zhilai, Whitlam was also a person of strong intellect, a studier of the classics, and he used his prize money from winning the 1948 and 1949 Australian National Quiz Championship as part of his deposit on a house. The other part came from his war service loan. This was a house in Cronulla. But Whitlam, in a way, helps us define who we are. Yes, at times it became tribal, it became, in some essence, hostile. But he was a person who helped everybody define where they stood politically. And I must admit that there are so many on this side who found their way into politics, as noted by the Deputy Prime Minister, because of an opposition to some of what Whitlam represented. But no one ever doubted the integrity of his beliefs. No one ever doubted the strength of his beliefs. No one ever doubted his passion. No one ever had to be told twice as to what he was saying. It was quite clear he knew who he was and he knew where his nation was to go. I think a notable anecdote has been given to me by one of the staff of my office, who was working, in fact, with the Australian High Commission in Nigeria in the 1980s, and recalls a delightful visitor, who was Whitlam, who after he's left politics came as part of a delegation. She recalls how he was charming and witty dinner guest. Coincidentally, a French vigneronnier was served for dinner with a brand of Agneau Blanc, and he declared his gratitude that she had served such an appropriately named wine. He took the empty bottle back to his room, soaked the label off as a memento, and gave it to her. She also received a charming note. That is also a statement of the humility of a person who looks into the heart of someone that they are just passing by and make sure that their life is a better place by meeting them. After Whitlam came Hawke, and many would say that because of Whitlam came Hawke. I think our nation deserves to honour Whitlam as one of the great politicians of our time, one of the great politicians of our era, and in so doing also remember the life of Margaret and also the children of their union, Nick, Tony, Stephen and Catherine. May you rest in peace.